Should we get going? Look, afternoon. So my name's John, managing partner at the Foundation, and I wrote this book called The Human Experience. Well, it won't be the last time in the next 20 minutes that I mention that I've written a book, so get used to that. But I'm actually going to save you the effort of reading the book. I'm going to tell you all of the main stories and the main points of it, try and cram it all into the next 20 minutes for you. So this story starts for me about 4 or 5 years ago. I was on holiday with my wife and my son in the UK, and we had a day out on a beautiful old steam train. And you know the type that I mean, kind of deep leather seats that you could fall back into, like a nice oak panel table that you could spread your food out on. Someone coming down the middle of the aisle, handing out home-baked goods. It was a really perfect experience. And my son turned to me and he said, "Oh, Daddy, is this what it's like when you get the train into London every day?" So I kind of thought about it and thought, no, emphatically it's not. Actually, I'm lucky to get a kind of stranger's sweaty armpit or a cold, wet panini. And I thought, well, isn't that interesting? Isn't that interesting? Because surely over the last 20 years, we've had all of this new amazing technology come about that should really help us create much better experiences for customers. But somehow we seem to have focused on making things quicker and faster and cheaper and more kind of efficient. But we've maybe done that at the cost of the emotional experience, the human experience, the thing that really matters to us and our customers. You could say that it means that organisations have now ended up being full of humans that aren't allowed to act in a human way, kind of restricted by process and procedure, not feeling like they're allowed to be the person that they want to be. And I thought, well, that's interesting. I'll go and write a book about that. But before I do, I should probably check it's not just me that thinks it. And it turns out it's not. 85% of people believe that organisations are now impersonal and have lost that human touch. 83% believe that organisations take their customers for granted. 81% believe that organisations are more interested in cutting costs than they are creating a great experience. Now, these are really quite damning statistics. Unless you've just written a book about them, and then they're actually brilliant for marketing it. It couldn't have been much better if I'd made them up myself. 78% of people also said that organisations send too many emails and too many requests for feedback. And you'll all know what I mean by this. I thought this tweet summed it up quite nicely. Does anyone know of a good website where I can get a shirt and then 2 emails every day for the rest of my life? But it feels like that, doesn't it now? You buy something online and then you accidentally enter into a lifelong digital pen pal relationship with an organisation that you hadn't previously banked on. So in the book, I start by talking about the myths. These 3 myths that I think get in the way of organisations creating a great customer experience. And the first of those is the myth of customer feedback, this epidemic of feedback requests we live in now. They come in all shapes and sizes, don't they? You get the pointless. Thinking about your experience of cancelling your standing order, how likely are you to recommend HSBC to a friend or family? And the answer being 0, because no one in the history of the world has recommended a bank based on how easy it is to cancel a standing order. You get the impatient. If you don't reply to your feedback in time, you get chased about it. What on earth could you be doing at 4:50 a.m. that's more important than reviewing your activewear from Sweaty Betty? It's not mine, someone sent that to me. I get my activewear from Primark. And then you get the inappropriate. So a couple of years ago, I had to take my mum to accident and emergency at Colchester General Hospital. And about an hour after we got home, I got this text message. Thinking about your recent experience at A&E, how likely are you to recommend it to friends or family if they need similar treatment? So while I've got you as a relatively captive audience, let me be quite clear. My strong recommendation to you, if you need emergency medical assistance, is to go to your nearest A&E. Okay, I don't want you, wherever you're living, thinking, well, Colchester said it's really good. John said Colchester was really good. Maybe I'll go there instead. No, go to your nearest A&E. And then you get the weird. If you go to Heathrow, you can rate the bin. I'm going to guess if the rubbish is in the bin, it's working. If it's outside the bin, it's not. And London Paddington train station toilets, outside the public toilet there's a touchscreen feedback terminal. Hands up, how many people are touching that? No one's touching that. That's the least touched touchscreen in all of London. Now, all of this is well-meaning. It's really important as organisations that you understand what matters to your customers. But the problem is, all of this feedback coming in, it's all at the thin end of the wedge. So if you imagine your customer's life as this wedge shape, at one end you've got their real world and their real life. All the things that really matter to them, their friends, family, their hopes, dreams, ambitions, the things they're trying to achieve, the challenges, the things that get in the way, the services they use to help. And right at the very thin end of the wedge, you and your organisation, a very small part of their overall consciousness. But yet all of this feedback that comes in is at the thin end of the wedge. What do you think about us? What do you think about our product? What do you think about our service? Would you recommend us? And if you want to really understand what matters to your customers, you have to get to the thick end of the wedge. And this matters because all of this data coming in, it convinces leaders that they're close to what matters to their customers. Whereas in truth, they're only really close to their customers' opinions of their business. It's a very subtle but significant difference as to whether you really understand your customers or not. The second of the myths is the myth of customer loyalty. And I guess really my view is customer loyalty doesn't exist. I'm sorry to disappoint the marketeers in the room. I think what we really talk about when we talk about loyalty is usefulness. Staying more useful to your customers and your competitors and the alternatives. I used to use this taxi company in High Wycombe called Nils. They were great. Loads of cars, low prices, you could pre-book, but it was cash only and the car was always just around the corner. Then this service called Uber appeared. You might have heard of it. And now I had this service that had loads of cars, low prices. You could pay by card and you knew exactly where the car was, but you couldn't pre-book. But that was more useful to me than Nils. So overnight, I stopped using Nils and I started using Uber instead. About a year later, Nils caught up and released their own app. And now I had a local service with loads of cars, low prices. You could pre-book, you could pay by card, and you knew where the car was. And this was more useful to me than Uber. So overnight, I stopped using Uber and I started using Nils again. There's no kind of inherent loyalty there. Maybe I'm just not a very loyal person. It sounds obvious to say, but if you stay more useful to your customers than the competitors and alternatives, your customers will stay using you. Now, some of you might not be convinced by that argument, so let me ask you a question. Put your hand up if you have some kind of hotel or coffee shop loyalty card that you collect stamps on. Okay, hands up. Keep your hand up if you've got more than one. Okay, nearly everyone. Okay, hands down. Put your hand up if you've got a partner, husband or wife, boyfriend or girlfriend. Keep your hand up if you've got more than one. Okay, no one. Okay, maybe some of you. That's loyalty, right? 9 billion people in the world and you stick with the same person because loyalty comes from people, friends, family, communities, not organisations. Stay useful, people will stay with you. This matters because if leaders believe that their customers are loyal, they stop trying to impress them. They focus on acquisition and onboarding, and instead they stop worrying about their customers when they've been with them for a long time, and eventually they lose them. So what does this mean, these myths? What does it mean for customers? Well, I think it means you get experiences like this. Do not reply email addresses. My current pet hate. Nothing says we don't care about our customers more than a do not reply email address. You get a big disconnect between the promise of the marketing and the reality of the experience. This is a sandwich packet someone sent me, and you can see it says, listen up, you shouldn't have to settle for the same old, not when you're hungry. Isn't that why you picked this up? Because you're done with the daily disappointment and ready to take a bite of something more satisfying. And this was the sandwich inside. The most ordinary looking sandwich. The copywriter's done a great job there. You get a lack of connection with the emotions customers might be feeling at the time. I got this letter from my mortgage provider in February last year, and it said, are you ready for that fresh rate feeling? Anyone remember what was happening to mortgage rates this time last year? Yeah, Liz Truss, remember that? It's fair to say I was not ready for that fresh rate feeling. I was quite happy with my old stinking rate of 1.79% and not the new fresh rate of 5.64%. Great marketing line a few weeks before. Got to think about how that lands with your customers. And then that language, that lack of straightforwardness in the language that we sometimes use as organisations. One of Britain's biggest broadband companies, if you go on their Join Us website page, you get invited to call their acquisition team. Because as humans, we all want to be acquired as much as we want to be retained and as much as we churn, right? This straightforwardness, that also counts for kind of symbols and signs as well as words. The other big fear we have on trains is the toilet door locked, right? Is the toilet door locked? This one here, when it's open, when it's locked, it points to open. This one here, door is not locked when lit. Door is not locked when lit. Just above a button that says flush. I thought, I'm not risking that, I'm going to hold it, and I just went out. Now, all of this came together for me, this kind of functional experience that we currently have as customers. When I went to try and buy a new chair about 4 or 5 years ago, I just moved home, and I thought I want one of those really big, comfortable reading chairs, temporarily forgetting I had 2 small children. So The chances of me sitting and reading it are pretty slim, but it's good to have dreams, isn't it? And so I drove to Next on a Sunday morning, and I was in luck. They had a half-price ex-display furniture sale on. Saw this big yellow chair, £300 off, and I thought, that's the one. That's the one I'm going to buy. The only problem was I'd driven there in quite a small car with my wife and my son, so not a lot of room to get a chair in, and you can't have these delivered. So I went and spoke to the guy, and I said, look, I want to buy the chair. Can I take it out to the car that's in your car park? See if I can get it in. If I can, I'll buy it. If not, bring it back in. And he goes upstairs, and he asks his manager, and he comes back down, and he says, no, you can't take it off the premises until you've paid for it. So I thought about it, and I went back to him, and I said, okay, well, can I buy the chair, take it out to the car, try and get it in? If it goes in, great. If not, bring it back in. I'll get a refund. And he goes upstairs, and he asks his manager, and he comes back down, and he says, no refunds on ex-display furniture products. I was okay. So I thought, okay, can I buy the chair and leave it here for an hour while I take my wife and son home, clear out the car, come back? And he goes upstairs, and he asks his manager, and he comes back down, and he says, no, once you've bought the chair, you have to take it off the premises immediately. So I thought about it. I was in one of these like chicken, fox, bag of grain puzzles here, you know. And I thought, well, what if I leave my wife and son here for an hour? And he was all right with that. He didn't even check with his manager. He was all right with that. So that's what I did. Kind of, you know, went to buy the chair, left them here for an hour. And I said to this guy, look, he was 21, big and muscly, everything I'm not. And I said to him, look, can you at least help me carry the chair out to the car that's in your car park? He said, yeah, no problem at all, no problem at all. And we're carrying it, and as we get halfway across the shop, he says, just to let you know, I can only carry it as far as the door, because after that, it's your property, and we're not insured if anything happens to it. True to his word, we get to the door, he puts down the chair, he stands back and watches, while me and my wife, who's 4'10" 3/4", struggle to get the chair into the car while my son's playing chicken with the other cars in the car park. It's the most ridiculous customer experience I've ever had. You know it's all ridiculous. If they were here, they'd know it. But it's happening in every organisation right now, every single day. People are making decisions that don't make sense, that don't have common sense, because they're scared of the processes and the procedures. So what do we do about this? Well, in the book, I went and studied a whole load of organisations to understand of the people that do this well, what's the kind of culture they have that enables this customer-led creativity. And they all had the same traits in common. One of those was connection. They had a real deep connection with what mattered to their customers, with what really mattered to their customers. They got up to the thick end of the wedge, and they immersed in their customers' lives, not just relied on the data. A couple of years ago, just before COVID actually, so 4 years ago, I was working with a food manufacturing company. One of the biggest ones. They do all the sandwiches for Tesco, and we were doing a project about the future of ready meals. And I got to go and have dinner with people in their homes and go shopping with them. And I went and had dinner with one lady. She was in her 40s, you know, kind of super fit and healthy, body as a temple, yoga instructor. Said to me she'd never use any kind of ready-mealed or pre-prepared food. Made sense in her house. Loads of recipe books, loads of ingredients, nothing that doubted her what she said. About an hour later, I went shopping with her to Waitrose, going up and down the aisles, and she picks up a ready-made mashed potato and throws that in. Ready chopped red onion, throws that in. And I said, well, how does that match up with what you were telling me? And she says, well, I haven't got time to peel and chop vegetables. That's just a waste of time. Anyway, we get to the end of the supermarket where all the good stuff is, and I think, well, we're going to fly past here. And she sweeps in a whole load of chocolate and a whole load of Prosecco. Like, see, any of you remember supermarket sweep? It was like flowing over the edges of the trolley. And I said, well, how does that match up with your super healthy lifestyle? And she said, oh, well, this is for girls' night on a Friday night. This doesn't count. And I thought that was a really interesting and insightful line about how we work as people. Because when I'd interviewed her, she hadn't lied to me. She told me what she believed to be the truth. She told me her version of herself that she wants to believe. Girls' night on a Friday night, that's her taking a break from being herself. That's her having a cheat day from herself. You're never going to get that from an interview. You're never going to get that from a survey. You can only get that from spending real time with real people in their environment, observing what goes on. That's why Citymapper, when they open up in a new country, they take a cross-section of their team and they go and live in that country for a month. And they move Airbnb every 2 days, so they get to experience what life is really like travelling through that city. Chiltern Railways, the #1 rated railway company in the UK, they insist all of their senior managers live somewhere along the Chiltern Railways line. So they have to use their own trains every day. They have to wear their name badges. And Alan Riley said, we do meet the manager and focus groups events, but the more formal the forum, the less I learn. I learn everything I need to on the 751 from Princess Risborough to Marylebone every single morning. The next thing people had was focus, a real focus on the moment that matters. Now, earlier on, I mentioned I had to take my mum to A&E a couple of years ago. And sadly, my mum passed away last January. She'd had quite a long illness. And this is the pub I was in when I heard the news. It was just down the road from the hospice which she was staying in. And my plan was to go in, get some lunch, have a drink, and then go and spend the afternoon with her. So I went in and I ordered my food and I sat down and I got the call. And I did what any of you would have done when you got the call. I just gathered up my stuff, ran out in the car and went. I went back into this pub about a week later because I had to go back and pick my mum's things up from the hospice. And I walked in and I ordered some food and I sat down and the barmaid came over. And she said, I'm really sorry, you were the guy that was in here last week, weren't you? And you rushed out. We were really worried about you. Was everything okay? So I explained what happened and she said, look, I'm so sorry. Please accept our condolences. Have your food and drink on us tonight. Anything you need, just come and see us. About 10 minutes later, the landlord comes down, the owner of the pub. And he comes over and speaks to me. And he says, look, I've just spoken to the barmaid and she just explained what happened last week. I was here as well. We were all really worried about you. I'm going to refund you for the food and drink you had last week because you didn't get to have any of it. And anytime you're in the area, come on in and we'll give you a free drink and we'll raise a toast to your mum. It's the most emotional customer experience I've ever had. And the thing is, you can't journey map that. You can't process that, map that. You can't design that. That relies on having real people that feel like they're able to be human at the right moment, to respond to a human moment. And just to lift the mood, this can also be positive moments as well. I bought a new car a few months ago, and when I went to pick up the car, I opened the boot, and in the boot they put a homemade personalised cake. It's a bit weird, isn't it? A bit weird, but at least it shows that they're trying to show me there's a moment there to celebrate. Only ruined by the survey I got from the guy that sold me the car a few days later. They said, you're going to get a survey and I'm going for promotion. I'll be ever so grateful if you gave me a score of 5. To do this, you need to have freedom. You need to have freedom in your people. AO.com do this brilliantly. They've only got 2 rules as part of their customer experience strategy. Treat every customer like your own gran. Make decisions that would make your mum proud. Now, there's one other trait, and the last story I'm going to tell you about is the most important, and this was ambition. Of all the companies I studied, overarchingly, they all had a real ambition to want to be brilliant for customers, and the best experience I ever had was just before COVID. I was lucky enough to be working with a railway holiday company, and I got to go on the first 2 days of a 10-day tour to Switzerland. There was 30 of us in a big tour group. We all got on the train at Geneva. We were going to change at Zurich, get to our final destination. And we set off. 10 minutes after we set off, the train broke down. Then something strange happened. The train manager came down, and the train manager came up to us and said, I'm really sorry. I'm really sorry. Please accept my apologies. I know you're a big group travelling through our country, and I know you've got an onward connection to make. I don't know what the problem is, but I'm going to find out. I'm going to let you know. I'll come back as soon as I know. 2 minutes later, we get a phone call from the head of operations at Swiss Rail. I know you're a big group travelling through our country. I'm really sorry for the delay that you've had. Your train manager's going to look after you. But should anything happen, you just give me a call. Here's my direct number. 10 minutes after that, the train starts off again. And true to his word, the train manager comes back down. He says, right, this is what the problem was. This is how we're going to fix it. And we're not expecting any more delays between now and Zurich. But you are going to miss your connection, and I'm really sorry about that. When you get to Zurich, this is the next train you need to get. This is the platform you need to get it from. But it's a big, complicated station. So I'm going to have a member of staff there to meet you and help you get to the right platform. Again, please accept my apologies. The train pulls into Zurich station. True to his word, there's a member of staff right there with an umbrella. We follow around from platform 1 to platform 14 where the new train's waiting for us. And they've already got a carriage reserved for us on the new train because we had one reserved on the old train. As we got on, she gave us tea and coffee vouchers to apologise for the inconvenience. Now, we ended up getting into our destination 25 minutes late. Going back to the start, if I get into London 25 minutes late on a Monday morning with Great Western Railway, I'm high-fiving the other commuters. Honestly, I'm hugging everyone. I don't know what to do with all this extra time I've got in my day. Part of that's infrastructure, but part of it's ambition. They made a promise that they were going to get us somewhere on time, and they weren't going to keep that promise. So they were going to do everything in their power to help make it as easy as possible. Thank you for listening for the last 20 minutes. I've thrown quite a lot at you, and I just want to leave you one thing. If everything else is too much, go and buy the book. It's pretty good. Go and get it. I really enjoyed it, and so did my family. I'm going to leave you with one final bit of advice because I've thrown a lot at you. This is my nan, Reenie Brush. She was 101 years old when she died, and she's the greatest human I think's ever lived. And she gave me 3 bits of advice when she was on her deathbed of how to live a long and happy life. The first bit of advice, you've got to laugh at the world. It's all a bit ridiculous, really, isn't it? So you've got to laugh at the world. The second bit of advice, drink whiskey every day. And I've really taken that one on, so I would go for that. But the third bit of advice that my nan gave me was, if in doubt, be human. And that, for me, is the essence of all of this talk, if I'm honest. Whether you're working with customers, stakeholders, colleagues, or just with each other, I think the world could all be a bit better if we're all just a little bit more human in how we treat each other, in the way we work, in the way we speak, in the respect to show. So thank you so much for listening. My one message to you is be human. This is where I am. Lovely. Have a lovely rest of the day. Thank you.